It is very similar to how we don't know where consciousness comes from. And as you said, it's a mystery, and then that's the wiggle room that it gets, and that is where those. It is very similar to how we don't know where consciousness comes from. And as you said, it's a mystery, and then that's the wiggle room that it gets, and that is where those conclusions are made based on a hypothesis that there is an ambiguity of consciousness, and that is where the idea of free will also originates from. But be that as it may, if you say that there is no free will, and going back to your earlier example of why did I choose the shirt that I wore, and I could have made that choice separately, or I would have made it differently. I would have been another person, or I would have had different cues, or I would have had a different genetic lining, or certain conditions that would have affected me to make that particular decision. We're talking a lot about personalization, which leads to a choice. And as we see, and as we live, and as we have this talk in 2025, AI is around, and we all know what it can do, and creatively as well, with not only with the reasoning but also with images and videos and text, and so realistic that you don't see that it is made from another human being, meaning that it can create hyper personalized content, and it can, this is just stepping on your idea of there not being free. There is just, like, life is just a set of well managed cues that you are taking time and again, but that's a little scary, do you think?
So I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with this idea that free will doesn't exist, because I think that the first thing you think about if you're given that proposition is that that means I don't have any control in my life, that I'm merely,
The illusion of
uh,
control.
yeah, that you have an illusion of control, but there's no
Yeah.
actual control, and that you're merely at the whim of all of this context outside of you. And I do think that's true to a certain extent. I do think that we are, when it comes to context and it comes to circumstance, circumstance can be quite
Yes.
decisive in how a person
Yes.
develops, how they live, right? We don't pick our family, we don't
Yes.
pick our genetics, we can't really take any credit for the fact that we've
Absolutely.
developed in a neurotypical trajectory. So the role of circumstance actually is much more decisive than we appreciate. So I think that is, I think that's true. But I also think that the other kind of reaction people have is that there's no more mystery anymore, right? If everything is predetermined and everything is following along this kind of a causal chain, then there's no more mystery. And I don't think that's necessarily the right way to think about it, because this causal chain, however decisive it is, incredibly complex, and
Huge.
it's
Yes.
incredibly
Massive.
multifaceted
Yes. Yes.
in such a way where we have no idea why it's unfolding the way it is, or all the variables that are conspiring to combine to produce the next word you're going to say, or the next shirt you're going to pick, or the next decision you're going to feel like you made. It propagates forward in such a complex way that we, the conscious entity, which is the only entity that matters, we're constantly surprised. And so because we're constantly surprised and it feels mysterious from our perspective, that is really all that matters. And
I know.
I don't know
Yeah.
exactly how I'm going to finish this sentence, right? I'm surprised every word that comes out of my mouth. I find out about it, the moment you find out about it, right? So we don't know the next word we're going to say. We don't know the next thought that's going to pop into our heads, right? If we're not the authors of our thoughts, right? Thoughts come and go. They're mysterious. They originate from processes that we, the conscious entity, are not aware of, right? We, the conscious entity, we find out about it as soon as it arises into consciousness, right? Where was it before that? No idea, right? So we're surprised just the same. So I think on the one hand, as a statement of like metaphysics and a statement of what's fundamentally true about human autonomy and human decision making, I think we can confidently say that free will doesn't exist and free will is an illusion. But from the standpoint of how does this change my life? How does this lead me to make decisions differently or live my life differently? I actually don't think it has very strong implications at all, aside from the fact that I think it
Yeah.
should give us a much deeper appreciation for the role of luck and for the role of context and circumstance, and for all of the good fortunes we have to rightly be recognized as our good blessings, right? These aren't things that we can really take any credit for.
I think that's bang on. I think the idea that uh, if you think that free will does not exist, that does not mean you should understand it, because
Mm-hmm.
it goes beyond your understanding of the physical world and how the brain works and how the world works. So even if you say that free will does not exist, which means that you are open to choosing whatever you want to do, you still don't know how the world works. So even if you don't believe in it, that's great. If you don't believe in the aspect that free will exists, does not exist, that's great anyway, because we don't know what we don't know. But if you do believe in it, then you should still be wary, because you still don't know how it works. You don't know, like, the only fact that you know that it doesn't exist does not give you an answer. It is not the solution to your problems. You just don't know how exactly it works. You don't know the mechanism, the physical mechanism of how context works, or how circumstance works, or how serendipity would work, or how luck would work. Even if it is well placed cues, it's massive. The mechanism is beyond our conscious awareness and understanding of things.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. So if we were like much simpler creatures, and every single time you saw the color red, you'd have to get aggressive, and it would happen at